Have you ever seen a headline about some new psychological study and just thought, how on earth did they figure that out? How do they really know? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to go inside the psychologist's lab and check out the exact tools they use to uncover the secrets of the human mind.
Think about a question like this. It's something pretty much all of us have wondered about at some point, right? It feels personal, it feels super relevant, and it's the perfect example of the kind of question that kicks off a whole psychological investigation.
You see, every single study, no matter how big or complicated it ends up being, starts with a simple curiosity about us, about why we do the things we do. But to turn a question like, does social media make us sad, into a real, scientific answer, well, you can't just guess.
And that's really the key. Science demands a system. It needs a solid plan and, just like a carpenter or a chef, a specific set of tools that are designed for the job at hand.
So, what's actually in this toolkit? Well, it's filled with different research methods. And the very first big decision a psychologist has to make is what kind of data they're even looking for in the first place.
So, this is the first choice, and it's a big one. Are you going to be counting things, measuring things, getting hard numbers? That's quantitative research. Or are you going to collect rich, detailed stories and experiences? That's qualitative. Basically, it's the difference between numbers and narratives. Okay, let's break down the main tools here. First up, you have non-experimental methods, things like case studies or surveys. Their whole purpose is pretty simple, just to observe and record what people are doing. The weakness, you have zero control over what's happening, so it's really hard to draw any firm conclusions. Next, you can look for correlations. This is great for spotting if two things seem to be related, like do people who spend more time on social media also seem to be sadder? But, and this is probably the most important rule in psychology, correlation does not prove causation. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other. So if you really want to find out if one thing causes another, you have to bring out the big gun, the experiment. This is where you actually change one thing on purpose. Say, you have one group school social media while another group just reads a book to see if it has an effect on their mood. That is how you isolate cause and effect.
So you might be sitting there thinking, all right, so which one is the best? And the answer is, it totally depends on the question. You wouldn't use a hammer to try and saw a piece of wood, right? It's the exact same idea here. You pick the research tool that's built to answer the specific question you're asking.
All right, let's talk about where a lot of this research actually happens. The lab. And look, this is where a lot of people get a little skeptical. They wonder if these super controlled, kind of sterile environments can really tell us anything about the messy, unpredictable real world.
And that's a totally fair question. I mean, a lab is by its very nature an artificial place. So how can we possibly trust what we learn there? Well, the secret is understanding what the lab is actually trying to do.
See, a researcher's goal isn't to perfectly recreate your daily life inside their lab. The real goal is to simplify reality, to strip away all the extra noise so they can test one specific fundamental idea, a theoretical principle. So they're not trying to copy your Instagram feed perfectly. They're trying to test the core idea of whether seeing other people's perfect lives makes us feel worse about our own.
And once that core principle is tested and understood in that controlled lab setting, it creates these resulting principles. Think of these as the practical takeaways, the insights that help us explain behavior not just in that one lab, but out in the real world across tons of different situations.
Now, no matter which tool a psychologist picks or where they decide to use it, there is one thing that guides every single decision they make, and that's ethics.
This part is completely non-negotiable. The search for knowledge can never, ever come at the expense of a person's well-being or dignity. So there's a really strict set of ethical guidelines that acts as a vital safeguard for everyone involved.
The very first line of defense is the Institutional Review Board, or the IRB. You can think of them as the gatekeepers of research ethics. Before any study with human participants can even think about starting, this committee has to go over the entire plan with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it's safe and ethical.
Okay, so once a study gets the green light from the IRB, the next step is informed consent. And the idea here is simple. Participants have to be told enough about the study, what they'll be doing, any potential risks, so that they can make a free and clear choice about whether or not they want to take part.
And finally, after the whole study is done, there's the debriefing. This is where the researcher explains everything, the study's true purpose, why they did what they did, and clears up any deception that might have been necessary. It's all about making sure people leave feeling good and knowing exactly what happened.
You might also be wondering why psychologists sometimes study animals. Well, there are a couple of key reasons. First, studying simpler biological systems can help us understand some of the fundamental principles of behavior that apply to us humans too. And second, it allows researchers to do certain kinds of controlled experiments that would just be completely unethical or impossible to do with people. And of course, all animal research is governed by its own set of very strict ethical guidelines for humane treatment.
So after this quick tour through the psychologist's world, you're now equipped with a whole new way of looking at this stuff. You're ready to start thinking like a psychologist.
If you take away just one single thing from this, let it be this: the how is every bit as important as the what. The next time you see a headline about some new study, don't just ask what they found, ask how they found it. Was it a survey, a correlation, or a true experiment?
Because understanding the method gives you the power to really evaluate the result for yourself. So the question isn't just for the professionals anymore. Now that you know what's in the toolkit, what curiosity about us, about human behavior, would you want to go out and explore?